All right. So if I was going to manually surface this, like to show somebody something, um, here's what I would do. Boundaries are always an issue trying to make nice clean surfaces and with boundaries and stuff. So I would do kind of what you started to do here, where I would trim some stuff really quickly if I was going to do something like this in front of the customer. I would intersect. I like using trim with plane. Oops. And then do stuff like this where I just delete a little bit of data, because if I don't have all of it, there's no point in trying to act like I have all of it, right? I just go ahead and trim stuff away to make it easier if I'm going to go ahead and make it easier to show somebody something and live in person. And then for something like this, I would just remove a little bit of that that stuff that's floating, that's wrapping around the edge, because I know that when you surface something in front of somebody, then it's really easy to screw something like that up. So just a second here. Where'd that selection tool go? So I'd use trim with sheet here. So just to trim a little bit farther back. And I would just probably do one up here too. Again, if I scan the whole part and I want to surface it in a certain way, here's one thing that's weird about trim a sheet, as you probably saw, because it looks like you might have used it on this, is you kind of have to leave it at a certain zoom level. I always forget. There we go. Now, I always get rid of these boundaries. Remove all boundaries, remove all subdivision points there. And then now's where you would go like manually draw the surface patches like I was saying before. So actually, let's go ahead and save this. Exact surfacing, contours. And this is what we were talking about where you can, and then that was an issue I was having before. Again, you're just trying to make it square patches as much as possible. That way they'll be nice and gridded when you fit surfaces. Just square-ish. Again, when I'm trying to show this live and do it fast in front of somebody, I don't worry about trying to get every little. And then from here, I would do this. So I guess the rule of thumb is maybe not do something quite that takes quite this long, because people will probably lose patience watching you unless they really are interested in it. But this is how I would go about it. And do these other two, which, just for the sake of time, let me just do one of these. It's not critical. But I'll show you the shuffling process. If you create nice, clean curves like this, then the shuffling goes pretty easily. So I talked about this before, like you can grab these nodes and move them around. You can click and add more of them. If you hold shift and drag out, you can actually smooth this line out. So if it's a wrinkly line because you've drawn it in a certain way, you can do that. That works really well. And then these are corner points. Sometimes corner points are get created. So if you want to, I think it's you hold Control, deletes it. If you click and drag across, it will create tangency, and then holding Shift and clicking on it will convert it to a joint instead of an endpoint that doesn't have curvature. And again, you can polish these and move them around. So once you get to that point, you can say construct patches, apply, and then I'll do a brief explanation of shuffling patches and how that works. But normally, if I have to show this live, I'll just cut like a little piece of it off that's real easy and square, because that will show the process without having to keep somebody busy forever surface modeling this whole thing. It just makes it a little bit easier to demonstrate by selecting a square area and then surface modeling it. Or just stick to auto surfacing, just because it can take time and you can lose people's interest. So this happens just like it happened to us before. So if you come into shuffle, I click on the points, and then sometimes this happens, right, where you get these, and you have to make these all match, which they're all 2, 2, 2, and 2, so I don't really need to worry about that, and I can restructure it. And if I'm cool with that one, then I can come over to this one, and then you'll see this one has 3, 3, so I need 2, 2, yeah, just re-execute. Next. Draw, click the side corners. 2, see, now this is an example of, this one has 2, this one has 4, 2, 2. So you can add and remove. I could add to this side, or I can remove and remove. If I add to both sides, then I have to add them all the way across the part, because then that one is going to need to be shuffled. So if I just remove it and go down to 2, then I can do that. So click the 4 corners. This is what shuffling is all about. 4 corners, 2, 2, 6, and 4. So I have to make a decision. Do I want to, it looks like that continues 4 along, so I'll just reduce this one to 4 instead, and then grid that out. There we go. And then again, when you make changes like that, everything kind of like ripples one way or the other. So now I have to go make this one 4s. Oops, I accidentally added one instead of removing it. Holding Control removes. And all these shortcuts are down here. I say grid it out, and then I can come over to edit where I can just move these points to make them a grid. So you get the point. This is why I also try to keep it minimal, because showing like something like this takes a while. And just hit grid. And if I'm happy with these, most people will let me demonstrate the general idea without having to show everything. So you see how I was able to correct that. And again, you can go crazy with this. And just polish these and make them just these beautiful surfaces. But once they're good to go, like I would fix all 4 of those corners, fix these guys so they're all gridded all the way across. And then as long as those are set up well, everything else goes easy. You hit grids, you hit surfaces, and then you've created your part. And it won't have any wrinkles in it as long as you make sure that you draw those out good. And then this is where that other stage picks up. If I draw these guys manually and then I save it out, go over to a CAD package, draw an internal shape, extrude it, and use this to trim a solid with, and that's how I would do that part. Another thing that I thought about that sometimes I will show is I'm going to go ahead and throw all those surfaces away. And here is one way that I surface things live is I'll come over to that trim with plane, not trim with sheet, trim with plane. And I'll just do something like this where you intersect the plane, but don't trim it. And using what this does is it creates boundaries. And when you auto surface, the boundaries have to be respected in the auto surface. So if I do something like this and it creates these nice boundaries that go across the part, to give it some guidance, you can come over and say create new auto surface mechanical, and then it will have to follow those red lines. It adds those in as curves automatically, and then it will look more gridded in its auto surface. So you can do it that way as well, just to create a nice cleaner model in front of somebody. So this is the surface. It didn't come out as good as I wanted it to. It's not necessarily the best example because look, it came out a lot like an auto surface does anyway. Like some of it was gridded out, but again, um, if I'm live in front of a customer, I might actually do something like this. I'll just grab all these, select bounded components, delete, and I would just come in and just surface a piece of it manually this way. That way, this is super easy, simple. Now, some people won't let you, and if that's the type of person that's like, hey, that's too simple, that's too easy, then that's also the person that's probably willing to sit there and watch you for a half an hour manually surface a part. So it's okay, and you can just manually walk through surfacing a part. But again, it just depends on who you're in front of. You were in front of this customer, so you can kind of speak to what it is that they were expecting versus I'm just making some assumptions and kind of showing what I do in front of people. So again, if you have this ability, you can, I don't know what the heck happened there, but you can just manually surface something like that in front of somebody. All right, I hope this helps. Let me know if you need any help with this customer. We can always figure something out. We can surface this using the manual surfacing tools to make a nice clean model if they would want a sample like that. All right.